Today, I am going to finish the series of talks on the four foundations of mindfulness. This mindfulness contemplation is called the mindfulness of phenomena. Phenomena means here outer appearances or objects of perception. And the point is that ordinary beings view them as very different from what they actually are. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche here is a quote of what he said. We fixate on outer phenomena as concrete, permanent, and real. So we have to get into a contemplation, an investigation of absolute truth versus relative truth, or the way things are and the way things appear. And again, remember, mindfulness of outer phenomena means receiving teachings on it, contemplating what the teachings say, comparing it with your own experience, and then meditating on it. And meditating on it, this is really Vipassana meditation, can include, after coming to a conclusion through listening, hearing, contemplating, just doing objectless shamatha meditation, where you just let go of the whole thing in rest, in a state where you are not meditating on an object. So the absolute truth is the ultimate nature. It's beyond concept, it's beyond characteristics, it's beyond words. Relative truth is the way phenomena appear. And phenomena appear to be very real, intense. It can appear that this is the only way this could be. And it's a world of concepts, descriptions, comparisons. And then, of course, we add to it what are called the afflictive states of mind. We add to it all kinds of judgments. We add our habitual patterns and so on and so forth. In a way, it's almost a separate reality that each one of us lives in. Just for instance, dogs. A lot of people really like dogs or cats, and they might seem very nice. But if you were a child and you got a very painful bite from a dog or a very painful scratch from a cat, you might look at this particular animal very differently than someone who grew up sleeping with a dog on the end of their bed at their feet. It's a dog. One person sees it this way, one person sees it another way. I frequently use the example of peppers. When I go through Subway and they say, "Do you want hot peppers?" I say, "I'll leave it for the next person." And you get someone like Khenpo Ujin, and it's hard to get enough hot peppers in front of him. They don't last long. Well, it's a hot pepper. That's all it is. So as humans, we live in a world that is relative, the world of appearances, and what one person feels the appearance is can be very different from what another person feels the appearance is. So relative reality is just plain the way things appear. And we again add this idea that it is permanent, that things bring themselves into existence rather than coming into existence due to causes and conditions. We see them as concrete, where they're solid, and we see them as real. So to go into this in a more detail, what we place on experiences and appearances that we have, they come from our habitual patterns that are a result of karma. Karma from our present life, things that we have experienced in our, as well as things that we have experienced in previous lives. The karma is stored in our eighth consciousness. It is sometimes referred to as the all-base consciousness. I have used the example, and this maybe isn't all that good an example, but I'm going to use it anyway. This all-base consciousness is a bit like a hard drive. where things that we experience, memories are stored, judgments are stored there. All kinds of things are stored in this all-base consciousness. And then when something arises that reminds us of something that's stored in that all-base consciousness, it pops up into our awareness, sixth consciousness, our consciousness that is aware of what's going on. And then suddenly something from the past starts influencing our emotions, our thoughts, and so forth. Sometimes it surprises us. You might say it catches us off balance. Where did that come from? I thought I, left that in the closet, so to speak. But anyway, this is what is at play in the world of appearances. And karma can be looked at as a seed that is planted when we engage in a particular action. And when the proper conditions arise for that seed to sprout, it sprouts, it grows, and eventually bears fruit. Now, us human beings, well, we do live in a somewhat separate reality. We have a lot of karma in common. We actually have a lot more in common than we have differences, which makes the present situation in the world today of us versus them a little bit on the ridiculous side, that we make such big things of little differences and such little things of huge commonalities. Anyway, in the human realm, we see things in similar ways. The classic example, and I'm going to be talking about the six realms here. The classic example is that in the human realm, humans see water a certain way. We see it as something that you can drink. We see it as something that can be used in many different ways. You can use it to water your lawn. You can use it for industrial purposes. You can use it to wash your windows and bathe in it, and maybe even go swimming in it if you like to swim, and so forth. In the animal realm, fish live in it. I had a dog that was part Labrador Retriever, and he thought that the best way to take a drink in the summertime was jump into the stock tank until he was this deep in the water and then drink it. Cats don't seem to like water so much, but the animals react to it according to the type of living situation that they have. In the hungry ghost realm, water is viewed by them as revolting, as pus and blood, and so forth. In the hell realm, it's viewed as a molten lava or a river of acid. In the cold hell realm, it's seen as ice. In the full God realm, it is seen as a bliss-producing elixir, and it's just water. Now, which is the right way to see it? All of these are just through relative reality. If you look at water the way it is, water is the way it is, and it's beyond description. It's that simple. Now, to get into these six realms in more detail, an example that I like to use, because here in the human realm, we experience all of these different emotions. Well, we're still in the human realm, and by understanding this, we can understand these other realms at a deeper level. An example that I have used recently, and I'm going to use again. Oh, and each of these six realms have a particular afflictive states of mind associated with it. The Sanskrit word is klesha, which means poison, and it refers to poison of the mind, that these afflictive states of mind poison our mind. They pollute it. They keep us from seeing the way things really are. So pride is in the full God realm. Jealousy causes you to be in the jealous God realm. Greed, never being satisfied with what you have and always wanting what you don't have, causes you to be in the hungry ghost realm. Anger causes to be reborn in the hell realm. The animal realm is one of Well, animals are described in Tibetan Buddhism as a being that walks hunched over. They're always just looking at what's right in front of them. There's no bigger vision looking up. And animals suffer from ignorance, just not seeing anything beyond what they're totally focused on, which is eating, surviving, and reproduction in the springtime. So frequently, ignorance in terms of ignorance or denial is referred to as the animal realm. So my example of how here in the human realm we can go through all of these emotions like that is a totally made up story, but you're feeling pretty arrogant and you with a group of your friends and you tell them, well, I'd like to take you all out to dinner at my favorite restaurant, and I'll pay for it. So you all go there, you meet, you order exactly what you want. Your friends order exactly what they want, and you're ordering perhaps your favorite dish there. And then the waitress comes, brings the food, and you look at the other plates on the table, and you don't say this out loud, but you think, I wish I would have ordered that. That looked better than what I have. So now you're jealous. You're no longer arrogant. So later on, the waitress comes and she spills some coffee on you. Now you're angry at her. You might even say a few words. And if you don't, maybe you're just thinking them. This shouldn't be happening to me. What kind of a da 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 is this waitress? So you've already had the pride, now the jealousy, now you've got the anger. And needless to say, you're not enjoying this meal nearly as much as you thought you were. And then it comes time to get the check. And of course, you have volunteered to pay for it and you pay for it. But meanwhile, your friends, they start talking, oh, I'd like to, pitch in for the tip. And now you're feeling greedy and you're not feeling very friendly towards a waitress and you don't even pitch in for the tip. And then on your way out, you're thinking, I wish I could forget this whole thing. I wish it never happened. And there you go. You go through all these different emotions, all these different realms in a period of an hour. And this is how relative reality works. We were all human there at the table, but we cycle through these emotions. This is what keeps us apart from other human beings. And it's all a matter of perception. Another example that I like to use, my parents, when they retired, they traveled. And as they downsized, you might say inherited a lot of stuff. And one of the things they gave me was a singing bowl. This is not the singing bowl they gave me, but it was a rather large singing bowl. They had been to Nepal, they had been to India, they picked it up over there. Why they picked it up, I don't know. They weren't Buddhists. But anyway, when they gave it to me, it had a potted plant in it. So they thought that it was a good, nice brass bowl to put a potted plant in, use it for a planter. Now, if I would fill this up with water and put it in front of Ellie's service dog, that dog would think it was a bowl of water, and it would work very well for that. And if I took this to a junk dealer, he would figure out what metal it was made out of, weigh it, and tell me it was worth this much. And on and on and on. Now, the man that made it may have intended it to be a singing bowl, but again, this is not solid. Just because it was intended to be a singing bowl doesn't mean that it is a singing bowl in the world of appearances. It's what you project on it, what it is. And so it is with appearances, that we're constantly projecting what we think it is onto it. Earlier, I talked about mindfulness of mind, examining mind, what mind is and what it isn't. And here's a quote from Khenpo Karta Rinpoche. If you look into the mind and are asked where this mind is, you cannot find an entity that is this perceiver or mind. It's that simple. That's the end of the quote. It's that simple. if you look and examine and really try to find your mind, your perceiver, you really can't find anything. Now, the rest of this quote is, quote, something that does not exist cannot define whether something else exists or not, end quote. So if your mind doesn't exist, how can what you perceive exist? This is when a Buddhist logic kind of, shall we say, boggles the mind, because we assume, and we have assumed, that things exist. Of course they exist. Again, the classic example is our experience is a bit like a dream. It's not exactly a dream, but it is a bit like a dream, that when you are asleep and dreaming, the experience seems very, very real. And when we awaken, we realize that it was merely a state of mind, a temporary state of mind. The whole point of this is to let go of feeling that external phenomena are fixed and solid and real, to be more flexible, to realize that phenomena changes, that they are interdependent, and so forth. I had an interesting experience Friday night. I was gone all day down to Rochester, Minnesota, seeing doctors. And I came back and it rained most of the time. But as I got literally 8 minutes from home, the rain turned into heavy snow. And I got less than 2 miles away from home on a very familiar road where it had a 90-degree turn on a little slope downhill, and fresh snow in warm weather on warm pavement that had a good coating of rain on it to begin with was very, very slippery. So it was a 90-degree turn. I think I made a 70-degree turn and ended up in the ditch. I tried calling up the local body shop in Ridgeland, and of course, their landline didn't even have an answering machine to it. I will add this, the man that owns the business has a sense of humor, and one of his tow trucks has on it 24/7 service. So I walked up to a man who is a distant friend that was maybe an eighth of a mile away. I talked to him. He calls up a man that he knows that works at the body shop, talks to him about this, and the man goes to the body shop, gets in the tow truck, and comes back to pull me out. But all of this took time. And what I found interesting then, this friend of mine, this distant friend of mine, who I really didn't know very much, out of the blue started quoting Heraclitus, who his most famous quote is, "You cannot step into the same river twice, because the river is constantly changing." Getting back to the point here, then I said, well, he also said that when you step into the river once, you're changed. And so it's a different person that steps into the river the second time. And then he told me he had a master's degree in philosophy. So we had quite a conversation. But the point is that phenomena is constantly changing. It's not fixed. It's not solid. So we experience phenomena in almost a dreamlike state. And Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche says this is what is meant by phenomena being beyond any perceived existence. Our perceptions are not objective. The observer is part of the perception and colors it. I guess I should go back to the story. I did get pulled out and I did get home. So here is another quote from Rinpoche. There is no reality, truth, or permanence to outer phenomena, but we do not recognize this because of our attachment. We think that phenomena are real, true, and permanent, but everything is impermanent in relationship to time. The past is past. The future is mystery. and the present is fleeting. You can take a picture of a waterfall, and you took the picture in the present, but now the picture is frozen in time. It's not the waterfall, it's a picture of the waterfall. And again, things are not interdependent, they influence each other, they are interdependent. And as I said, the perceiver changes. We think that we don't change, but we do change. You've got psychology. There is psychology that works with infants and early childhood. And then you've got childhood psychology. Then you've got teenage psychology. Then you have adult psychology, midlife crisis psychology, psychology for people that have retired, geriatric. I'm separating these two because I'm 77 and I'm just retirement. I'm not geriatric. Then you have hospice psychology, and there's probably 100 other definitions in there that if you really went into it. And if we stayed the same, how come do we need all these different kinds of psychology? We actually change quite a bit. We might fight it, but we change quite a bit. We don't recognize this because of our attachment. And then when we get attached to things, eventually things change and we become angry, frustrated, and all kinds of other emotions come up. And all of this creates negative karma. And then it's more of the same old, and we wonder, how come I'm not getting anywhere? The point of all of this is to realize how the mechanism works and to realize that we can step back a little bit and view things more from a distance. And then when things change, we don't get sucked into the drama as deeply as we used to. My favorite fortune cookie I received when I was out at Karme Ling, the 3-year retreat center, not at the retreat, but I was in the Lama house. I had lunch with Rinpoche and a number of other people. And after lunch, somebody brought around a large box of fortune cookies, obviously had been donated by a Chinese donor, and it was a commercial-sized box. And so each one of us reached into the box and grabbed our own fortune cookie. And mine read, quote, "To see your drama is to be liberated from it." I think he had enlightened fortune cookies. So if we can kind of let go and start seeing this drama on the relative appearance side of phenomena, we can start loosening up and letting go and creating less negative karma. When we engage in actions that are harmful to ourselves and or others, we create negative karma. When we engage in actions that are beneficial to ourselves and others, we create positive karma. And positive karma leads to pleasant situations in the future. Negative karma creates negative consequences in the future. The point is, this is the example Rinpoche uses. If you have a fire burning and you keep adding wood to it, the fire keeps burning. But if you stop adding wood, the fire dies down. So if we reduce our production of negative karma, we have a chance of things gradually settling down and we can move towards liberation. Otherwise, it's just the same old, same old. An example that I have used is you're in a small boat, let's say a rowboat, and it's got a hole in it and it's leaking water. So you've got a bucket there and you're bailing the water out. Well, can you bail the water out faster than it's coming in through the leak? It's best to plug the leak, at least try to slow it down a little bit. The point is the same. Reduce the amount of negative karma you create, and then you don't have to bail so often. Or if you really bail a lot, you don't have the water in the boat at all. You don't have to worry about sinking. So purification practices are very good too. To finally sum up this, with all these four mindfulness practices, it's excellent to have a basis in shamatha meditation. There's a carryover into post-meditation. You become more mindful, you pay more attention. And when you do have painful experiences, they are a reminder to avoid making these mistakes in the future. So it's always excellent to do shamatha meditation. Now, I'm going to analyze this mindfulness of phenomena from the Hinayana level, the Mahayana level, and the Vajrayana level. I'm going to go through this relatively quickly here. So the Hinayana level, you're taught to see samsara as a trap. We are conditioned to experience pain and suffering. We want to end that pain and suffering and view samsara as like a nest of poisonous insects that you don't want to be living in anymore. You want to avoid it at all costs. This example kind of reminded me of some of the action movies of the 80s, like Raiders of the Lost Ark. So liberation is attained by avoiding attachment to this nest of poisonous insects. External discipline is stressed, like staying out of bars, staying away from groups of people that like to gossip and talk about their strong emotions. I hate that person. That person is really wonderful, da, 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 da. It's interesting. You don't gossip in front of people. You might give them a piece of your mind, but it's always done behind people's backs. So anyway, just avoid situations that are going to bring up strong emotions. It's like you're walking down the street, you see an enemy coming towards you, you realize that there'll probably be an interaction and you're going to lose, and so you cross the street or you make a right turn before you get to that enemy. And of course, you can try to work on being less reactive. On the Mahayana level, you approach it the same way, that samsara is painful and it's like a nest of poisonous insects, but your approach is different. You add this idea of emptiness, that phenomena is empty. So there is nothing to fear, nothing to be attached to. Now, this is the view. It doesn't mean that you are there. And this can help weaken your reactivity, weaken your attachment to outcomes and the way things are. And you add this view to your contemplation and to your practice. This is the idea that nothing is self-existence, nothing exists substantially, and that characteristics that we ascribe to a phenomena are just things that have been ascribed to them. We look at phenomena as being impermanent. It doesn't last. We see that things don't bring themselves into existence, that they come into existence due to causes and conditions. And the descriptions that we have for phenomena, they're just words. What does a word mean? Is there a word that has a meaning beyond the dictionary? Dictionaries, to my understanding, are intended to explain the meaning of words. So if you want to know what the meaning of a word is, you go to the dictionary. That's what my second grade teacher told me. And then the definition is other words. And if you don't understand all the words that are used to describe that first word, then you go look them up in the dictionary, and on and on and on. And there is no word in the dictionary that when they give it, it says there aren't any words to describe this. There is no word, to the best of my knowledge, that does not have a description used in other words. There might be in some religious or spiritual traditions, but I'm not aware of them. Rinpoche would say that these words, descriptions, even the practices leading us to enlightenment were the finger pointing at the moon. And if you're going to see the moon, you have to quit looking at the finger. these words, these descriptions, these practices are just pointing us in the right direction. And then once you do experience the moon, you can't say anything about it because it's beyond conception. This is what makes Tibetan Buddhism a mystical spiritual tradition. So even separating mind from matter is dualistic from a relative point of view. If you want to look at are objects solid, in classical Buddhism, these great Mahasiddhas, and the scholars too, would talk about how you can separate objects into smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller parts. And you would be able to do that conceptually. And they came up with the idea of an atom, and an atom was a particle that had no parts. If a particle had a top and a bottom and sides, it had parts. So an atom had no top or bottom or sides. It could not be reduced into something smaller. And then Buddhism came to the West and met modern physics. And then you have subatomic particles, and then they are divided up into smaller particles. And then you had quantum physics, which talked about probabilities. You can't even say this subatomic particle had a location, only had a probability of being in a particular location at a particular point in time. And now it's gotten to be way beyond me. They talk about string theory. We're not going to go there. Basically, modern physicists live in a relative world, while ultimately they understand there is no such thing as substance. This is basically what the Buddha said. So the idea of emptiness is to apply this aspect of wisdom to what we experience in the world of appearances. Now, there are ways to misunderstand this. And one way is that because of emptiness, phenomena disappears. And one mistake that practitioners of Vajrayana make is when we dissolve everything into emptiness, like we did when we did White Tara, it means that what you are is in your vision disappears. It doesn't mean that the room that you're in and the contents of the room disappears. It merely means that you are acknowledging that is empty of inherent existence. And now you are creating a visualization, and you're going to place your attention primarily on the visualization. But again, the visualization is coming from emptiness, and it's just relative appearance. So it's a mistake to think that you need to close your eyes so you can block out the world of appearances that's already in the room. So that's a mistake that you want to avoid. The other is, and I don't know exactly what the technical term for this is, but if you start thinking that, well, the world of appearances, it really is empty, then think about it this way. If you would go out with your body that is empty of inherent existence and stand on an interstate highway, or the Canadian equivalent of an interstate highway, which had no inherent existence, then an 18-wheeler with no inherent existence would come and hit your body with no inherent existence, and you would have a lot of pain and suffering that had no inherent existence, and you would experience a death that had no inherent existence. And I think all of us would like to avoid that. So it is keeping this idea of emptiness of things ultimately, but also being aware of the world of appearances follows cause and effect, karma. And so we have to be aware of both, but not take the world of appearances as seriously as we do. Here is a quote from Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche. Phenomena, whatever we are experiencing, has no true existence. Phenomena appear like an image in the mirror. There is a wood piece here on my front door with glass on either side of that. The blue is looking through a second front entry door, and that's the east sky. and it's getting close to sunset. Now, this here, what you can see my pointer is, that is the sun coming through my west window in the kitchen, which has stained glass on it. And so the glass in this door is acting like a mirror, and yet you can also see through it to the blue sky in the east. So it's all like an illusion, but it appears. And that's my best example of like a appearance in a mirror. But if you didn't know that, you might wonder what is going on here, or what did I do digitally to create this? So the idea of taking appearances to be a bit like an image in a mirror where they appear, but they are appearing in a way that is slightly deceptive. Now, the third way to look at this mindfulness of phenomena is through Vajrayana. What is added here is the practitioner is not only aware of the unrealistic nature of dualistic phenomena, but, quote, because of the depth of their spiritual development and because of their accumulation of merit, they try to transform phenomena into a Buddha field, a pure land. And this transformation is a result of the accumulation of wisdom and merit. Nothing external has changed. It is just a matter of the perceiver. And in this pure land, the most common one that we encounter here at our center, our KTC, is Dewa Chen, the land of great bliss. The difference between samsara and nirvana has to do with our state of mind, the degree that it's free of negative karma. When we build this visualization, let's say we're doing Chenrezi, where we would build this visualization of Chenrezi, ourselves as Chenrezi, and Dewa Chen, and so forth. Then at the end, we dissolve it and rest in emptiness the best that we can, without beckoning the future or bringing up the past. Then after we dissolve it, we re-arise as Chenrezi, and we view all sound as the sound of his mantra, all thought as his mind, and the environment as a pure land, and all sentient beings as Chenrezi. So this is the Vajrayana approach to external phenomena. I'm going to end with a plug for an upcoming program. And that is, in a few weeks, our book class will be going into the 5 Buddha families and ordinary consciousness. So if you want more information about this, please check our schedule and you are invited to attend. The question is, are the mantras that we do, are some of them beyond translation? And this is a very good question. In a way, they have all been imbued with power by having been repeated by so many people for millennia. And there is an aspect of them that is beyond translation. And frequently, as you could tell by our White Tara practice, the words were not translated into English or even Tibetan. It is good to study what, if not the actual meaning, what the deeper significance of the mantra and the deeper meaning of the mantra is. So to answer your question, they can be translated, but there is a much deeper meaning to these mantras than just the words. Does emptiness appear to sound and the other senses? And the answer is, yes, it does. And I will add this. One time at a teaching, when it came to the Q&A, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, the man said this, "I'm afraid of emptiness." And Rinpoche smiled and he answered back, "I'm not." The question was that I find it a little overwhelming, this view of emptiness. The point is that emptiness is wisdom, and we have to join it with skillful means. And that is, well, how do we work with this world of phenomena, external experiences that we live in? So the story is about a nomad village, possibly in Tibet, could have been in other parts of that world. And so this nomad had horses. Horses were very valuable. And one day he woke up in his corral, a wild stallion had wandered into overnight, and he quickly closed the gate. And the word spread throughout the village. And the villagers came to him and said, "Oh, how fortunate you are. You have this very strong stallion that can be very useful for breeding your mares, and you will get very strong young from him." And they kept praising him at his good fortune. And his response was, "Well, maybe so, maybe not." The next day, when he woke up, the corral fence had been broken down, the stallion escaped, and he took all the man's mares with him. Now the villagers came to give him condolences. "Oh, how terrible this is. You've lost your horses. You've lost so much of your wealth. What are you going to do to replace these horses?" And on and on and on. So his answer was, maybe so, maybe not. The next day, when he got up, the stallion returned with the man's mares and his own herd of mares. And the man closed the gate. He was the wealthiest man in the whole area. And the villagers came to praise him about how fortunate he was, how wealthy he was, that he was just outstanding in the whole area because he had so many horses. And his answer was, maybe so, maybe not. Well, that day his son decided to break the stallion. And of course, he got bucked off the stallion and broke his leg. And now the villagers came to console him. "Oh, how terrible this is. Your son isn't going to be able to help you with your spring planting. What are you going to do?" On and on and on, the usual. And he said, maybe so, maybe not. Well, the next day, the Mongol army came and they forcibly conscripted every young man in the whole village into their army, but they left the man's son behind because he had a broken leg and was of no use. And that's the end of the story. I could quote Yogi Berra, who said, "It ain't over until it's over." Maybe that's why I got the name Yogi.